Have you ever heard of the Tulip Era? A time when an entire empire became obsessed with a single flower, a period of unprecedented art, luxury, and cultural blossoming. But this beautiful era also hid deep social tensions and would ultimately lead to the downfall of a sultan. Today, we're diving into the fascinating story of Ahmed III, the Ottoman Sultan who presided over this dazzling yet precarious period. His reign is a tale of grand palaces, secret diplomacy, military gambles, and a rebellion that brought it all crashing down. So, who was the man at the center of this whirlwind of change? Let's find out. Ahmed III came to the throne in 1703 not through a grand coronation, but in the chaotic aftermath of his brother Mustafa II being overthrown. The Ottoman Empire was in a tough spot. It had recently signed the Treaty of Karlowitz, marking the first time it had to cede significant territory to European powers. The old days of unstoppable military expansion were over. The empire was now forced to navigate a new world where Europe was gaining power and influence. Ahmed inherited a state that was wounded, yet still vast and powerful, trying to find its new place on the world stage. This was the complex backdrop for his 27-year rule, a reign that would be defined by a unique mix of looking inward at its own culture and cautiously looking outward towards the West. Early in his reign, Ahmed III had a chance to flex his military muscles and regain some lost pride. The target was Russia, led by Peter the Great. In a brilliant campaign, the Ottoman army managed to corner the entire Russian force, including the Tsar himself, at the Pruth River in 1711. Instead of annihilating them, which they could have, the Ottomans negotiated the Treaty of Pruth. This treaty forced Russia to return the key fortress of Azov and was seen as a major victory. It was a huge boost to Ottoman confidence and seemed to signal that the empire was still a force to be reckoned with. It showed Ahmed III could be a shrewd and successful military commander when the circumstances were right. However, this military success didn't last. The empire soon found itself embroiled in another war, this time against its old rival, Austria, and its ally, Venice. This conflict did not go as well. The Ottoman army suffered a series of devastating defeats, most notably at the Battle of Petrovaradin. The war ended with the Treaty of Passarowitz in 1718. The terms were harsh. The Ottomans lost significant territories in the Balkans, including Belgrade, a city of immense strategic and symbolic importance. This defeat was a sobering reality check. It made it painfully clear that the military gap with Europe, particularly Austria, was widening. The victory at Pruth now seemed like a temporary high before a much harder fall. It was after this humbling defeat that Ahmed III's reign took a dramatic turn. Unable to compete with Europe purely on the battlefield, the focus shifted. This is when the famous Lâle Devri, or Tulip Era, truly began. This period, lasting from 1718 to 1730, was a time of relative peace and an incredible cultural renaissance. The name comes from the elite's obsession with tulips, which were cultivated in countless varieties and became a symbol of beauty, luxury, and status, but it was about so much more than just flowers. It was a conscious effort to embrace elegance and refinement, heavily inspired by what Ottomans were learning about European culture, particularly French high society. Istanbul was transformed. Ahmed III and his Grand Vizier, Nevşehirli Damat Ibrahim Pasha, were the chief architects of this transformation. They commissioned magnificent palaces, ornate public fountains, and sprawling gardens. The Sadabad Palace, inspired by descriptions of the French palace of Fontainebleau, became the centerpiece of this new aesthetic. It was a place for poetry readings, musical performances, and extravagant festivals. Art and literature flourished. Poets like Nadim wrote verses celebrating the joys of life, love, and the beauty of Istanbul. Miniature painting took on new life, depicting scenes of courtly leisure and garden parties. It was a golden age of Ottoman arts and culture, a vibrant period where the empire turned its creative energies inward, producing works of lasting beauty. But the Tulip Era wasn't just about parties and palaces. It was also a period of groundbreaking diplomatic change. For the first time in its history, the Ottoman Empire began sending permanent ambassadors to major European capitals like Paris, Vienna, and Moscow. This was a radical shift from their traditional policy of feeling superior to the West. The goal was no longer just to negotiate treaties, but to learn. They wanted to understand European politics, military technology, and society. The most famous of these missions was led by a man named Yirmisekis Mehmed Çelebi, who was sent to Paris. His detailed report, or Sefaretnam, about his experiences in France was a bestseller back in Istanbul. He described French architecture, social customs, theatres, and even the botanical gardens. His observations had a profound impact, directly influencing the design of places like the Sadabad Palace and fueling the elite's fascination with European styles. This period also saw the introduction of a major technological innovation, the printing press. While printing in non-Arabic scripts had existed in the empire for centuries, Ibrahim Muteferrika, with the support of the Grand Vizier and the Sultan, established the first press to print books in the Ottoman Turkish language using Arabic script in 1727. This was a monumental step. For the first time, books on science, history, and geography could be reproduced more easily and cheaply, helping to spread knowledge beyond a small circle of scribes and scholars. It was a key part of the reformist spirit of the Tulip Era, an attempt to selectively adopt Western technology to strengthen the empire from within. However, while the elite were enjoying tulip festivals and reading newly printed books, a different story was unfolding for the common people. The extravagance of the court, the endless construction of palaces, and the lavish parties were all funded by heavy taxes. The gap between the rich and the poor grew wider and more visible. Many people, including the conservative religious scholars and the powerful Janissary corps, saw the Tulip Era's embrace of Western styles as a decadent and impious departure from tradition. They resented the elite's opulent lifestyle while they struggled with economic hardship. This simmering discontent was a powder keg, just waiting for a spark. That spark came in 1730. It was ignited by a former Janissary of Albanian origin named Patrona Halil. He rallied a mob of disgruntled artisans, workers, and fellow Janissaries in the streets of Istanbul. The rebellion grew with astonishing speed. Their demands were simple: an end to the heavy taxes, and the removal of the high officials they blamed for their suffering, including the Grand Vizier. The revolt was not initially aimed at the Sultan himself, but as the chaos spread, Ahmed III lost control of the situation. He tried to appease the rebels by sacrificing his Grand Vizier and other officials, but it wasn't enough. The mob, led by Patrona Halil, demanded his abdication. Trapped and powerless, Ahmed III had no choice but to step down. The Tulip Era had come to a violent and abrupt end. After his deposition, Ahmed III was replaced by his nephew, Mahmud II. He spent the last 6 years of his life in the cafes, or the cage, a luxurious apartment within the Topkapi Palace where potential heirs to the throne were kept in confinement. It was a quiet and ignominious end for a sultan who had presided over such a vibrant and transformative period. He died in 1736. The Patrona Halil revolt was a shock to the system. It not only ended a sultan's reign, but also brought the Tulip Era's cultural experiments to a screeching halt. The beautiful Sadabad Palace was destroyed by the rebels, and for a time, a wave of conservative reaction swept through the empire. So how should we remember Ahmed III? His reign is a study in contrasts. He was a ruler who achieved a stunning military victory against Russia, but also suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of Austria. He was a great patron of the arts, overseeing a cultural golden age that produced some of the most beautiful art and architecture in Ottoman history. He was a cautious reformer who opened the empire's eyes to the West and introduced the printing press. But he was also a ruler who became disconnected from his people, whose courtly extravagance fueled a popular uprising that cost him his throne. Ahmed III's death. story is a perfect example of the challenges the Ottoman Empire faced in the 18th century. The difficult balancing act between tradition and modernity, between military power and diplomatic adaptation, and between the desires of the elite and the needs of the masses. His reign, with all its splendor and its tragic end, remains a crucial and endlessly fascinating chapter in the long story of the Ottoman Empire. Thanks for watching our deep dive into the life of Sultan Ahmed III. What do you find most interesting about the Tulip Era? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. See you next time.